And in India, these secrets were used by many yogis for higher spiritual growth and for higher power. The secret is mudras.
For thousands of years, ancient civilizations have passed down sacred hand gestures known as mudras, believed to unlock energy, connect with higher realms, and in rare cases, open doors that were never meant to be opened. Most mudras are tools for healing, focus, and inner peace. But some were different, hidden, erased from scriptures and banned from practice. Why? Because they were said to unleash something far more powerful and far more dangerous. These are the 7 forbidden mudras they don't want you to try. The hidden language of the hands. There's a quiet power resting in your hands, one that most people have forgotten, and even fewer are willing to explore. Before the world became noisy with machines and screens, the ancient ones spoke in movements, stillness, and breath. Among their sacred languages was one rarely spoken of aloud, mudra, the mystical art of hand gestures that hold the key to the body's energy systems. These were not random signs. They were codes, symbols that opened channels in the spirit, unlocked hidden truths, and awakened states of consciousness most cannot even imagine. In the traditions of yoga, Ayurveda, Buddhism, and even ancient Egyptian and Tibetan teachings, mudras are described as bridges. They bridge the physical and the energetic, the external and the internal, the known world and the mystery that hides behind the veil. Touch your fingers together in a certain way, hold your hands with intention, and you're not just shifting posture, you're signaling to the body's nervous system, the prana or life force, and even the universal mind itself. It sounds simple. That's why it's so overlooked. But here is the truth. What is subtle is not weak. What is gentle is not powerless. In fact, these 7 particular mudras, some lost in scrolls and others whispered through the years, were known to be too powerful. Their effects were said to ripple through not just the body, but the soul. And when misused or misunderstood, they could unbalance even the most disciplined practitioner. That's why they faded into the background. Some say they were hidden, others say they were banned. All agree they are not to be taken lightly. Think for a moment. Why would a simple hand gesture need to be kept secret? The answer begins with understanding what your hands really are. More than tools for survival, more than instruments of creation, your hands are antennas. They carry electrical signals, pulse with meridians, and complete circuits in the energetic body. In many cultures, healers knew this instinctively. Saints and mystics were always shown with their hands in strange yet graceful positions, not because it looked holy, but because it was. The act of holding your hands in a specific mudra is not decorative, it's directive. It commands the flow of subtle energy. It tells your prana where to go, what to activate, what to dissolve, and what to awaken. That's why certain mudras were only taught after years of discipline. Why were some reserved only for monks, masters, or initiates? Why others were practiced in caves, temples, or under sacred trees? In yogic belief, the 5 fingers are symbolic. Each represents an element: thumb, fire; index, air; middle, ether; ring, earth; little, water. When you press them together in particular ways, you aren't just creating a shape. You are rebalancing the very elements of your being. You are restoring a lost harmony, one that mirrors the cosmos itself. This isn't just philosophy. In modern science, it's well documented that hand positions can influence the brain. When monks were studied in meditation, holding specific mudras, their brainwaves shifted. Cortisol levels dropped, heart rhythms slowed. There is something real, measurable, and yet still far beyond explanation that happens when the hands remember their ancient postures. But not all mudras are soft and soothing. Some are keys to doors that most minds aren't ready to open. These 7 mudras, rare, potent, and whispered about in sacred texts, don't just bring peace. They bring clarity, and true clarity can shake a person to the core, because once you see clearly, once you raise your inner frequency beyond what's comfortable, you can't go back to the sleep you once called normal. The First Mudra. There's a certain feeling that enters the room before the truth does. It's quiet, like a change in air pressure, subtle, unmistakable. And if you've begun this journey, you may have already felt it. Maybe when you held your hands in a still position and something shifted, a buzzing in your fingertips, a calm that didn't make sense, or perhaps a memory, blurry and distant, brushing against your awareness like a feather in a dream. This is not imagination, it is initiation. The first of the 7 forgotten mudras is not famous. You won't find it in yoga classes or glossy wellness magazines, yet this mudra, simple, almost casual in its form, has been known to awaken the third eye, stir the subconscious, and sharpen the inner vision to such a degree that some who practiced it would abandon their old lives altogether. Not from fear, but from the sheer weight of seeing things clearly for the first time. Before revealing the gesture, it's important to speak of energy. In many ancient systems, whether it's the yogic chakras of India, the Qi in Chinese Taoism, or the Ka in Egyptian mysticism, the body is seen as a vessel for energy, not just blood and muscle. What the mudras do is redirect that energy, like a river being guided through channels. When energy flows through the heart center, it brings compassion. When it flows to the third eye, it brings insight. When it roots into the base of the spine, it brings stability and primal awareness. And yet, when this energy is unbalanced, we feel confusion, disconnection, fear. The First Mudra realigns this flow. The story goes that a hermit monk, who had long lived alone in the forests of ancient Nepal, discovered this mudra while watching the flight of a bird. He noticed the bird's wings were not tense, yet they directed the entire body through the wind. Mimicking the curve of the wing with his hands, he felt a surge of light rise through his spine. It was as though his breath became a current, and his mind, clear like a mirror, began to reflect not thoughts, but symbols, impressions, visions. What he had found was more than a posture. It was a code. The form itself is graceful, the tips of the thumbs and index fingers pressed together, forming a triangle. The other fingers remain softly extended. The hands rest near the solar plexus, the space of will and intuition. This mudra, once held for even 5 minutes, was said to activate the pineal gland, what many mystics call the seat of the soul. Science supports some of this. The pineal gland, located deep in the brain, responds to light and influences sleep, dreaming, and melatonin production. But ancient wisdom tells us it does more than that. It is the gateway between the physical and spiritual realms, the eye that doesn't see outward, but inward. And the First Mudra seems to open this eye. The result? For some, a rush of clarity. For others, sudden emotions, unprocessed, long hidden, visions, synchronicities, or dreams that feel like riddles meant just for them. And, in rare cases, a spiritual sensitivity so sharp that the noise of daily life feels unbearable until properly grounded. This is why the mudra was hidden. It doesn't just help you relax, it shifts reality, or more accurately, it helps you see reality, not the one constructed by expectations, fear, or survival, but the one underneath it all, the raw, humming field of energy that dances behind what we call real. Philosophers and mystics have spoken of this kind of seeing for centuries. Plotinus, the Greek mystic, once said, "Withdraw into yourself and look. And if you do not find yourself beautiful yet, act as does the creator of a statue. Cut away all that is excessive, straighten all that is crooked. This mudra, this hand gesture, begins that inner carving. It shows you what is crooked, not in judgment, but in gentle truth. But what do you do with that truth? That's the real question, because once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, the soul will not return to sleep without resistance. That's why this path must be taken with care, and why so many turn away just as the door begins to open. You may notice as you explore this gesture that you begin to feel more aware of your surroundings, more sensitive to light, noise, and even people's moods. This is not your imagination. Your system is recalibrating. It's remembering how to listen, how to feel beyond the surface. In some esoteric circles, this process is called energetic purification. In simpler terms, it's like your inner senses have been dusty for years, and now you're finally wiping them clean. But the dust held stories, pain, history, and now it rises before it clears. Be gentle with yourself in these moments. The ancient Taoists believed that where the hands go, the energy follows. When you hold this mudra, you're not just making a shape, you are signaling to the deeper parts of yourself that you are ready to see, to wake up, to remember. What you begin with your hands, your body will echo, and your spirit will respond. So why was this mudra banned? Because knowledge without readiness is chaos. Because too many people seek power, not peace. And because there are forces, internal and external, that prefer a sleeping world to a seeing one. But the fact that you're still here means you are not like most. The Second Mudra. If the First Mudra awakens vision, the second awakens voice. But not the everyday voice used to answer emails or make small talk. This voice is older. It is the vibration behind your words, the pulse behind your breath. It is what the ancient mystics called the soundless sound. And when this part of you is stirred, you begin to speak less, but mean more. This mudra is linked to the Vishuddha, the throat center. Vishuddha means purification, because this center is not just about talking, it's about telling the truth. And before we speak truth to the world, we must first speak it to ourselves. In spiritual texts, this is the realm of the word, the same word that was in the beginning, as some sacred books say. Philosophers have long believed that vibration shapes reality. Pythagoras believed that numbers and sounds held the blueprint of the cosmos, and in the Eastern traditions, sound is sacred. Chanting Om, for instance, isn't just vocal, it's vibrational. It tunes the body to the rhythm of the universe. This second mudra was once practiced by wandering sages who rarely spoke, not because they had nothing to say, but because they understood the power of silence. Their words carried weight. They had unlocked a frequency that aligned their outer expression with inner knowing. And the gesture they used to do this was deceptively simple. Bring the tip of your thumb to the base of your throat and let your other fingers extend slightly forward, palm inward, as if cupping something unseen. Hold it gently, as though cradling a candle flame. This is not about forcing energy. It's about allowing it. Sit with this mudra in stillness, and you may notice a tightening in your throat, a tickle, a pressure. That's old energy rising, memories you never voiced, emotions swallowed, words left unsaid. This is why the mudra was hidden, because what comes up is not always easy, but it is always necessary. In some traditions, an unspoken truth becomes illness. The body holds the words the mouth couldn't say, that tight chest, that clenched jaw. They often carry years of silent screaming. This mudra helps you listen to that silence and eventually liberate it. There's a parable of a sage who once walked among the people with his lips sealed. When asked why he never spoke, he replied, "I am unlearning the lies I once spoke to please the world." That is the work of this mudra. It clears the static so that only what is real comes through. You might find yourself suddenly needing to cry, or laugh, or sing. You might find forgotten words arriving at your lips without thinking. This is the voice realigning with the soul. This is an expression without distortion. Be patient with yourself. Do not rush to speak too soon. Let the energy settle. Let the old truths rise. This mudra works like a tuning fork. It shakes the dust from the strings of your being until they ring with clarity again. And here's the mystery. This mudra is also connected to telepathy, not in a movie sense, but in the ancient sense, true resonance between beings, where words become unnecessary. Monks who practiced this mudra for years were said to speak without speaking. Animals would approach them. Children would trust them. Their presence alone became a kind of language. Why would anyone ban a mudra like this? Because when people speak from truth, they cannot be controlled. They do not echo what others expect. They create sound waves of change. This kind of voice breaks spells, not just metaphorical ones, but the illusions we've been taught to believe. Once you unlock it, you begin to rewrite your own narrative, and that makes you powerful. Some say they've used this mudra before difficult conversations, before facing their own shadows. Others say it helped them recover their real voice, not just vocally but in life. They stopped shrinking. They stopped apologizing for existing. They started singing again, writing again, praying again, not out of fear, but from a place of deep remembering. Because that's what the voice is. It's a bridge between inner and outer worlds. Now that the first two mudras have begun their work, vision and voice, the inner temple is being activated, one sense at a time. But you are not just opening up, you are stepping into the role of creator. Each mudra is like a note. Together they make a song, and that song is ancient. That song is you. The next mudra, the third of the seven, moves us from speaking truth to feeling it. It calls the heart out of hiding. The third mudra. There is a chamber in you that you most never visit. They decorate the exterior. They renovate the mind. They even explore the edges of spirit. But few dare to step into the center, the pulsing, radiant core that sits just behind the sternum. Not the physical heart, but the emotional nucleus. The seat of longing, love, grief, and grace. The place where your soul speaks in feeling. This third mudra unlocks that chamber. If the first awakened vision and the second revealed voice, then the third unveils vibration, the felt truth of being. It's said that all healing begins here because the heart is not just a metaphor, it is a frequency generator. And this mudra, it turns it on. Here is the gesture. Place both hands at the center of your chest, palms touching, but with a slight space between them, like holding a sphere of light. Let the thumbs rest gently against the sternum. Close your eyes. Breathe into that space, slowly. You might feel warmth, or pressure, or a tightness that wasn't there before. That's the lock beginning to shift. The ancient name of this mudra has been lost or hidden, but those who practiced it called it the gesture of remembrance. Because when the heart opens, memory returns. Not just of childhood or past lives, but of your original state, who you were before the world told you who to be. In many mystical schools, the heart is the first place the soul touches upon entering the body. It is the altar of incarnation. And this mudra was once used in initiations, when the student was ready to stop observing life and start feeling it completely. Why was it banned? Because nothing is more dangerous to systems of control than a fully activated heart. A heart that feels everything cannot be manipulated by fear. It cannot be numbed by propaganda. It cannot be bribed by comfort or distracted by noise. A heart like this knows. It sees through falsehood, not with logic, but with resonance. It hears the silent no in a smiling yes. It senses the lie in polished truth. And it refuses to be silent about injustice, not from anger, but from an unbearable ache for harmony. When you sit with this mudra, old pains may arise. Grief you thought was buried, love you thought was lost, regrets, forgiveness, yearning. This is the chamber being cleaned. The altar is being dusted. You are not regressing, you are clearing the static. Some mystics believed the soul leaves a blueprint of your deepest longing in the heart center. That longing is sacred. It is your true north. This mudra helps you feel it again. And here's a strange thing reported by some practitioners. While in this mudra, time seems to bend. You may remember things you've never experienced. You may weep for someone you've never met. You may feel love that has no object, just an immense wave, like the ocean loving the moon. This is the return to source. Some say this mudra has the power to heal not just the emotional body, but the physical one. Studies in subtle energy fields suggest that coherent heart rhythms can shift entire biologies, that compassion, when embodied fully, has electromagnetic ripples that extend far beyond the body, and those ripples, they change rooms, they change people, they change worlds. But there's a reason few people stay in this state. It is overwhelming, it is humbling, it is raw. You feel everything, and yet, within that flood, you are more yourself than ever. The heart is the only place where heaven and earth meet. This mudra is the doorway. So now, after vision and voice, you've entered the heart, and the path continues deeper still. Because once the heart opens, something strange happens next. The past begins to awaken, not just yours, but the collective. You begin to remember things buried in the bones of humanity, sacred things, hidden things, and the next mudra, the fourth of the seven, was feared precisely because of this. It doesn't just reveal memories, it reveals power. The fourth mudra. You don't find this mudra, it finds you. It waits until your body is soft, your mind is clear, and your heart is open. Then it moves through your hands like a whisper remembered from a dream. You don't learn it, you remember it, like a language your soul used before it ever had a name. This fourth mudra is known in some ancient circles as the power seal. Not because it gives you strength like muscle, but because it reconnects you with the deep force that's always been inside you. That quiet, ancient certainty you had as a child. That knowing that you belong here, and that nothing in this world can steal your truth. To begin, bring your hands together in front of your navel, one over the other, palms facing the body. The thumbs gently touch. It's a cradle, not a grip, a soft holding. This isn't about tension, it's about presence. When you settle into this posture, a strange thing may happen. You might feel heavier, not in a burdened way, but anchored. Like your spirit, which floats through thought and feeling, has suddenly come home. This is the center of will, the solar fire, the hidden generator just below your ribs. And most people live their whole lives without lighting it. This mudra was banned in many spiritual traditions, not because it causes harm, but because it unlocks self-direction. It opens a person to inner command, which cannot be dominated from the outside. In this space, you stop looking for someone to give you permission. You stop waiting for signs. You become the sign. Some philosophies call this your hara, others call it the Dantian. In Western mystery schools, it's linked with the inner sun, an energy that doesn't come from above but burns within. It's said that when this center is fully active, even sickness and fear retreat, because it is the seat of life force. But why is it hidden? Because once you remember your true power, you can't be controlled. And not power in the ego sense, not dominance, not controlled, not manipulation. This is authentic energy, the ability to move from your own source, to speak because you must, to act because you feel moved, to create not for approval, but because something divine wants to come through you. And that kind of freedom scares people. This mudra isn't flashy. You won't feel electric shocks or visions. But what you will feel is weight, a sacred weight, a sense of, I am here, I am real, I exist fully in this body. It's grounding, stabilizing, powerful. When practiced consistently, people report feeling more centered in daily life, less reactive, less swayed by the world's noise, more decisive, clearer, aware of their worth, not as a concept, but as a living presence. One teacher in an old Himalayan lineage called it the mudra of walking mountains, because when this energy wakes up, even your stillness becomes an action. Your silence becomes a message. You don't need to chase anything. You draw it in. This is also the seat of transformation. In many alchemical texts, the fire at the center of the belly is what transmutes fear into courage, pain into wisdom, and doubt into clarity. It is where raw experience becomes soul gold. This is why monks, sages, and warriors alike worked with this mudra in secret. Not to gain power over others, but to remain rooted, even in chaos. Because when this fire burns steadily, it's nearly impossible to be shaken. But beware. Activating this center will bring to the surface anything that blocks your power. Old fears, childhood programming, guilt, shame, everything that told you to shrink or stay small. Let it rise, let it burn, let it go. Because the world needs you whole, not half awake, not halfway in your body, but alive, here. Now this mudra is a call to reclaim the power that was never lost, just buried. And once this energy flows freely, the body begins to shift. Breath deepens, digestion improves, eyes brighten, the aura thickens. You stop leaking energy into old stories. You return to the center. And what comes next is even more mysterious. Because with power comes something unexpected, a doorway into time. The Fifth Mudra doesn't just work on the self, it works across timelines. It connects past, present, and future into a single thread. It opens you to something so vast, so old, it almost feels like memory and prophecy merged into one. The Fifth Mudra. Some say time is a river, others say it's a spiral. But those who've practiced the Fifth Mudra say it's something stranger. A mirror that reflects not only what has happened, but what could happen, what should happen, and what already exists beyond our understanding. This is the Time Mudra, and it's unlike anything before it. You won't find it in beginner books, you won't see it used in yoga classes, and there's a reason. It doesn't simply calm the body or quiet the mind. It alters the rhythm of your presence. It shifts how you experience the moment and how the moment reacts to you. It starts simple. Place your left hand palm up, fingers open, resting near the heart. Then layer your right hand on top of it, palm down, so the hands are parallel, hovering slightly apart, like a pause between two energies. Like a gate, like a breath waiting to become something more. Breathe gently, and then still yourself. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. You must become like the eye of a storm, calm even as the world turns. Because this mudra doesn't move with speed, it moves with depth. What happens next isn't easy to explain. You may feel a flicker of déjà vu. You may remember something that never happened. You may see a future version of yourself smiling in silent recognition, not as a hallucination, but as a touch point on the thread of your spirit. In many old schools of thought, Hermetic, Vedic, even native cosmologies, time isn't a straight line. It's layered, alive, fluid. Our choices ripple across it, shaping what we call fate, and certain mudras were used to step outside the normal pace of that flow, to witness it differently. This one lets you listen to the time, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in flashes during meditation, sometimes in the space between seconds where intuition becomes voice. This is why it was hidden, not because it's dangerous, but because it's powerful, and because it demands honesty. You can't use this mudra if you're only interested in outcomes. It reveals paths, not promises. It shows possibilities, not guarantees. You must come with the heart of a seeker, not a controller. It's said that this hand posture aligns the left and right hemispheres of the brain, syncing your logic with your imagination. In that balance, something opens. A portal, a window, a space where the past can be healed and the future can be reshaped by the purity of your presence right now. You may be shown your younger self, waiting for the comfort you never gave, or your older self, standing where your current fears no longer matter. This is sacred work, because when you see time this way, you stop rushing, you stop regretting, you begin to live fully, knowing every moment echoes forward and backward. Some who practice this mudra regularly report odd synchronicities, thinking of someone and they call, dreaming of a symbol and then seeing it the next day, feeling drawn to do something, then realizing it prevented a greater harm. This isn't magic in the fairy tale sense, it's alignment. You begin to flow with time instead of chasing or fearing it. Many masters believed that this mudra could help dissolve karma, not by erasing the past, but by healing it. When you hold this posture and enter the stillness, you can send love to your former self. You can forgive. You can change the energy of what was, and in doing so, transform what is. And something strange happens when you do this. Your energy field changes. You begin to walk differently, speak with more clarity. People notice. Opportunities shift, because you're no longer living in a delayed echo. You're present, and your presence becomes magnetic. But a word of caution: time is sensitive. The more you understand it, the more responsibility you have. You can't unsee the connections once you start seeing them. You become more accountable, not just for your actions, but for the energy you carry into each room, each choice, each breath. That's why this mudra is often called the gate of knowing, because what you touch isn't just about moments or dates. It's about meaning. You begin to feel what is meant and what is not. You stop guessing. You start sensing. You stop forcing. You start allowing. And in this sacred space, your life becomes something more than a timeline. It becomes a living prayer, a series of choices made in harmony with a truth deeper than thought. And once you've seen the threads, once you've felt the moment slow around you and reveal its hidden wisdom, you're ready for the next mudra. The Sixth Mudra. There is a moment that comes when the veil lifts. Not all at once, but just enough for you to realize something deep, something quiet, something unshakable. You are not separate from anything, and you never were. This is what the Sixth Mudra reveals, and once you touch it, nothing will ever be the same. It has been called many things: the mudra of oneness, the gesture of the great return, the hand of the mirrorless self. But in silence, it has no name, only presence. It is not performed for others to see. It is not flashy. It is not beautiful in the way the world understands beauty. Yet, it is everything. To begin, you sit still. You don't try to control your breath. You don't try to think or not think. You let go of effort. And then, with hands open, you gently press your fingertips together, thumb to thumb, index to index, and so on, until your hands form an oval shape. It looks like an eye, a portal, a seed, The space in the center is not empty. That is where you meet everything. This mudra connects both hemispheres of the brain, both sides of the body, the higher and the lower energies. But more than that, it brings you face to face with your own soul, and with the soul that flows through all. As you hold the posture, something begins to soften. The walls you built inside yourself, the idea that you're alone, the illusion that you're separate from the world around you, from nature, from others, from love itself. You begin to feel what ancient mystics felt in caves and forests, under stars, and in temples built before language. That your body is not a boundary, it is a bridge. That your thoughts are not private, they ripple through the field. That your heart was never just yours, it was always the world's heartbeat whispering in you. The Upanishads speak of Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. This mudra shows you what that really means. You are not looking at the world, you are the world looking at itself. At first, it might feel like silence, stillness, but then a strange warmth rises. Not fire, but peace. A feeling of being held, as if by light, as if every loss, every mistake, every moment of grief was seen and understood by something bigger, something that was never judging, only waiting for you to come home. In this space, time bends, thought quiets, words feel too loud, and something begins to shift, not in the mudra, but in you. You may start to see the edges of your identity dissolve. The I that worries, that doubts, that separates itself from others, begins to fade. You realize that your story, however unique, flows from the same source as all stories. The river is one. This is where things can become overwhelming, because when you realize there is no separation, you must also accept that everything you do, everything you think, every act of love or harm ripples across the whole. The kindness you withhold, it echoes. The forgiveness you offer, it heals more than you'll ever see. This is why the Sixth Mudra was kept secret in many teachings, not because it was dangerous in itself, but because once you experience this unity, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer act from ego without feeling the pain it causes. You can no longer pursue power without seeing what it costs others. You can no longer ignore the sacredness of life. It's not always easy, but it's true. And truth, once touched, stays with you. Buddha said, "To understand everything is to forgive everything." The Seventh Mudra opens that door. You begin to forgive yourself. You begin to understand why others suffer. You begin to see beyond appearances into the heart of life itself. And here's something you may not expect. This mudra doesn't just bring clarity, it brings joy. Not the kind tied to outcomes or validation, but a quiet, steady joy that comes from belonging, from knowing, from remembering that you were never alone, not for 1 second. The trees know you, the wind recognizes your breath, the stars hum your name. You were born connected. This mudra simply reminds you. The Seventh Mudra. There are moments in life that feel like keys, small, quiet, but capable of unlocking doors inside us we never knew were there. The seventh and final mudra is like that. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and in its whisper, the sleeping part of you finally stirs. This mudra isn't taught in common circles, and for a long time it was passed on only in private, sacred spaces, whispered from teacher to student in temples lost to time, or meditated upon in solitude by seekers in deserts, mountains, and deep forests. It goes by many names. Some called it Uchchavas Mudra, which means rising breath. Others named it the Mudra of living light. But those who knew its true power understood. This is not a gesture you perform, it's a doorway you become. You don't begin this mudra with your hands, you begin it with your breath. More than breath, awareness of breath, because here breath becomes prayer and prayer becomes activation. The hands follow the breath. You sit quietly, your back straight but relaxed. Then you place your right hand over your heart and your left hand just beneath your navel. This isn't a pose of control, it's a pose of listening. One hand listens to your heartbeat, the other listens to your creative fire, your life force energy, often called prana, chi or K, depending on the tradition. As your hands rest there, you do nothing except breathe deeply, naturally. You inhale through the nose, but not forcefully. You exhale through the mouth, but without effort. The key is to let the breath move through you, not from you, as if you are being breathed by the universe. As you breathe this way, something extraordinary begins to happen. The breath stops being just air. It becomes memory, not personal memory, but soul memory, a remembering of your original state, before labels, before fears, before separation. Ancient Egyptian initiates believed that breath was the bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds. The word for breath in their teachings was closely related to the word for spirit. The same was true in many early cultures. In Hebrew, the word ruach meant both spirit and wind. In Sanskrit, prana. In Greek, pneuma. Breath has always been more than survival. It's the thread connecting you to the divine. This mudra activates that thread. Soon, as you breathe, you begin to feel lightness, first in the chest, then rising through the throat until the mind itself begins to quiet. You're not escaping. The body, you're expanding within it. You may feel vibrations in your palms, warmth. You may feel like you're inside a bell that's just been struck, a hum that isn't sound, but something deeper. You're tuning your frequency, and it's here in the quiet hum of awareness that something incredible occurs. You stop trying, you stop doing the mudra, and the mudra begins to do you. Your breath leads your body, your energy rises from the belly to the crown of your head, and your mind becomes a wide open sky. Thoughts pass like clouds, but you no longer chase them. You witness, you receive. This is when the awakening begins. The mudra of awakening breath is not about visual fireworks or out-of-body sensations. Its power is subtle and therefore undeniable. It reminds you that you don't need to escape to become free. You don't need to transcend the body. You need to live fully inside it. And here's where the final mystery is revealed. This mudra isn't just for meditation. Once activated, it becomes a way of living. You walk through the world with a living awareness of breath. In conversations, you listen with your whole body. In silence, you feel connected. In pain, you breathe through, not around it. In joy, you don't grasp it, you become it. The ancient Taoists taught that immortality wasn't about never dying, it was about never forgetting the flow of breath through every moment. Life, death, rebirth, all of it a cycle, all of it carried on the breath. This final mudra gives you that awareness, but it also gives you something else, humility. You realize this was never about mastering energy. It was about surrendering to something far greater than ego, beyond control or manipulation. It was about trust, trusting that you are more than a body, more than a story, more than a name. You are a breath inside the breath of the cosmos, and in that breath, you are never alone. As the practice comes to a close, your hands slowly release. You bow your head, not out of duty, but out of reverence for what you remembered. You do not need to seek the light. You are the light. And with every breath, you remember, these 7 mudras were never truly banned, but they were protected, not because people weren't worthy, but because they were sacred, and sacred things must be met with sincerity, presence, and care. Now you know them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.